Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Chocolate Chatters. I'm here with Jessica from Jessica Chocolate Journeys. Hi, Jessica. Nice to see you. Let's learn about what it is you do, your part in the whole bean to bar realm. You focus a lot on education, so we'll get all into that, which is really exciting. But before we start, let's have a few fun icebreaker questions. Okay, so you ready? Um,
Yep, as
first
ready as I will
question.
be.
First question is, what is your favorite thing to do with a friend other than eat chocolate?
Oh, go for a walk.
Ah, nice walk.
I
Love
think
walks.
amazing conversations come from either the silence or the things you see,
Mm,
or just the things that come up in conversation when you're walking. It's just there's something
yeah,
about it that just you can't beat. Yeah.
that's true. Yeah, and that's not
Mm.
something you could do online, right? You have to be in
No.
person to to go for a
That's
walk.
right. Yeah.
What is your favorite Australian animal?
Oh, now this is a toss-up. So we have a platypus here, which
Right,
is a furry animal that can swim, that
right.
has paws that are also flippers, that has a beak that doesn't do anything. It's kind of like a mishmash of everything. So they're kind of cool because they're unusual.
Right, right.
My other favorite Australian animal is a wombat because it's just this ball of brown. Its poo is square shaped, which I think is kind of cool.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
And they
Wow.
look really friendly and lazy and just mosey around it, head down, bum up, kind of bulldoze. But
Okay.
if you piss them off, then yeah, watch out. So it's a toss-up between the two. They're both
Right,
brown.
right. It's interesting because from my point of view, I don't know Australians either, but platypus just seems so strange. Like to Canadians, it looks
It
like a
really
beaver, duck
is.
with, it's just such a strange animal. But if you grew up with it, maybe it doesn't seem that strange. I don't
It's
know.
just a thing.
Yeah,
I've only seen it once or twice in the reel because they love to keep to themselves.
right, right.
Um, and I've only ever seen them in water or sunning themselves. Yeah.
Cool.
Um, we do have a lot of unusual animals.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'd
Okay.
probably go those two. Yeah.
Next question. What is a superpower you wish you had?
Oh, to become invisible.
I like that one too. Yeah. It was
Yeah.
either that or I always wanted to be able to turn into an animal, which is kind of to be
Oh,
invisible
yeah.
as well. So,
Either that or being able to fly, I think.
yeah.
Yeah. Being able to be invisible or being able to fly. Yeah. I
Cool.
think that'd be cool.
Um, what is your favorite non-chocolate dessert?
Oh, I love if it was a hard form thing, a macaron. If it's a drink, it's a muscat wine.
Muscat wine.
Mm.
Okay.
It's a fortified wine. It's sweet.
Okay.
Think think a really dark red wine, but
Hmm.
then make it kind of mapley, kind of,
Okay.
yeah, it's a sweet
Nice.
red. Yeah. Very,
And
very,
good. And if you have to pick one, so be able to live anywhere in the world or stay in Tasmania, but never have to worry about money again. So stay in Tasmania forever.
oh, which would I rather?
Yeah.
Stay in Tasmania.
Oh, okay. Okay. Just some
Yeah.
love for Tasmania there.
Yes and no. I think it's more the fact that you wouldn't have to worry about money. So then therefore you could travel anywhere in Tasmania. And there are some really remote places that like
Mm,
on a map, it looks like it would take you an hour to drive, but because of the way the road is set up, which is not set up very well at all, it could take you like 5 hours to get there.
oh, wow.
I think having someone else to be able to drive that and then just be able to pay them for that.
That
And
sounds
I
really
just get to
nice.
sit in the car and enjoy the view the whole way. Like, because we don't have we have very limited public transport. So to
I
get places,
imagine.
you
Yeah.
basically have to drive. There's
Right.
not really another option. So to have a personal chauffeur that I didn't have to pay for,
That
that would be pretty neat.
would be
Yeah.
wonderful. Okay. So let's start by learning about who is Jessica. So where did you grow up?
Yeah, sure. So I was actually born in the ACT, which is the Australian capital of Australia, which
Okay.
is a state within a state on mainland Australia. It's tiny. So you've got Australia, and that's divided up into five. And there's New South Wales, and within New South Wales, there is a state called the ACT.
Oh,
And I was born there, grew up there until I was two, and then moved to Tassie when I was two. Stayed here until I was 18,
mhm,
and then moved to Melbourne. So Tasmania is one state, it's a little island state.
mhm.
Victoria is the next state closest as the crow flies, but you have to travel across water.
Okay.
Um, and spent the next 20 years there before moving back to Tasmania. Yeah.
Mm, mm.
So I
So,
haven't traveled far, but yeah,
but was
mainly
it in Tasmania or was it in Melbourne where you discovered bean to bar chocolate? When did that happen?
I discovered chocolate in Tassie. I discovered bean to bar chocolate in Melbourne,
Okay.
Victoria. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
So when you say you discovered chocolate in Tasmania, you're talking about just grocery store chocolate? Is that
Yep.
chocolate you grew up with? Or?
Cadbury's, health food shop chocolates are like all your carob and your yogurt chocolate.
Right.
Um, and um, yeah, that's because we did a lot of physical activity growing up, sort of little athletics, judo, gymnastics, dancing, lots of different things. And that was the reward,
Mm, mm.
chocolate. Oh, and
Wonderful.
we were also homeschooled. So learning maths, learning science required chocolate for learning how to add up and how to do geography
There you
and
go.
how to measure. So chocolate was very infused into childhood, but bean to bar chocolate was discovered in Victoria, Melbourne.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And Melbourne is sort of from what I understand, it's sort of a city that there's a lot of foodies gravitate towards, a lot of interesting things happen there. So it makes sense that
Yeah.
the bean to bar would sort of happen in Melbourne there. And
Yeah.
do you
Yeah.
remember, or do you want to share what your first brand was that you enjoyed, or your first bar?
Oh, my first bar wasn't Australian. My first bar was, well, there are a couple. The three that I recall were one from Kasama, their Filipino
Oh, really?
one from Solstice, which was their Wasatch, and one from Solkiki, which was their Ecuador. They're the three bean to bar bars that I remember tasting. I tried a few before then and gone, oh, this is not very interesting.
Mm,
Um, because I was used to Lint, and Lint is
right.
very bitter, and I was expecting bitter. So when it wasn't bitter,
Mm.
I was like, not really a
That's an
fan.
interesting point. That's an
I
interesting
wanted the
point.
bitterness. Where's that gone? Um, so when I first actually tasted those three that I just mentioned, and got flavor that I really wasn't expecting, that's
Mm,
when I was like, wow, there's actually more to this than just
mm.
chocolate that doesn't taste bitter. Because
Yeah.
when I tasted the first one, the very first one I tasted was a Bohemian Co. Is that what they're called? I think so, in Perth,
Okay.
and it wasn't bitter. And I was
Mm,
like, well, this isn't interesting. I
yeah.
want the bitter. I don't get this. And then I tried those three, and I'm just like, wow, this
Isn't that
is,
funny? Because, bean to bar world is always about producing bars that are not bitter, not bitter. Make sure you pick beans that are
yeah.
not bitter. And then a lot of customers too, I try and get them into the single origin and they say, no, I like the sort of the sweet one. But there are customers
Mm,
like you that actually like the bitter or like
I
used to
really like the bitter.
anyway.
Like one of my favorite,
That's
it
interesting.
sounds weird, but my favorite sort of, because I like tea, but I also like something with a little bit more oomph. So
Mm.
my favorite hot drink is just a spoon of cocoa powder with hot water. Like that's my favorite
Wow.
drink. It is really bitter, like bitter, bitter. But
Right,
I love
right.
that.
That's so interesting.
Um,
I wonder if it has to do a little bit with our genetics, because our genetics dictate a little bit our tolerance for bitterness and our how we receive it. So I wonder if that's a part of it
yeah,
too. Very
yeah, it
interesting.
could be because yeah, I really, and then if you look at the types of things that I like in life, they're all the bitter things.
Mm,
The bitter vegetables, the bitter
mm,
fruits, the things
right.
that are bitter.
And we're told that the
I don't know where
bitter,
it came from, but I just like,
right. And we're
yeah,
told that the bitter ones are beneficial too. So like, bitter rapini
yeah,
and
they are.
bitter
But
foods can be good for us. Yeah.
yeah. So my
Okay.
bitterness tolerance is quite
So what about
high.
now? Do you still seek bitter bean to bar or
Yeah,
how do you?
I do. But I think, but to get but I like the I like the sweetness. So I
Mm,
think, but to get I like a little bit of bitter still in there.
right,
So I tend to go sort of 70 and above.
right.
Like
You want a
I
little bit of
really like
punch.
I really like a good 90 or 100, but then you're getting the acidity, and I hate acidity, can't
Right,
stand acidity.
right.
So you've got to get this balance between the bitter, high bitter, low acidity, but with a bit of sweetness in there. So
Have you ever
it's
tried the Hiendra and Vere 100% Ecuador? Do you remember?
no,
Because that
but I
one
tried.
is 100
You go
and there's zero sourness. So I think you would really like that one.
really. Jen, from Just by Meltdown in New South Wales, got
Hmm.
some Fijian
Mm,
cacao, and she did a 100% of theirs. And that there's no bitter. It's
okay,
just, I could go for that for hours
very cool.
until,
I need to
yeah.
try her chocolate
I'll
one
have to
day.
try the hand and butter one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think you'll like it.
Mm.
Um, so my next question was, I think you answered it already, is what excited you the most about this bean to our chocolate? And I think you mentioned just that it
Yeah.
was these interesting flavors that you weren't
Yeah.
expecting.
And also, so I've I've got a lot of allergies to different things, and
Mm,
they've only been discovered over time, over growing up. But I've got memories of trying those things back in childhood. So what really blew my mind was when I first tried bean to bar chocolate, and I could try the memories that I couldn't try in the real, if that makes sense. So like I could taste,
right,
what's the flavor note? Caramel, say, because that's often made with dairy.
right, right.
So I could taste caramel. I've got the memory of caramel, but can't consume caramel as a
Mm,
dairy one
hmm.
anymore. So then to taste that in something else blew my mind, because I'm like,
Yeah.
where's this come from? But
That's
I
very
know that
interesting
taste.
because I don't really have any allergies to any food. So
Mm,
that's a really interesting point. I never thought of that because there are a lot of people who have allergies to certain things who can't enjoy it. And now you're
mm.
basically telling them you can enjoy those flavors again through chocolate. That's pretty cool.
Which was really cool, and then that made me sort of be really curious. What bar
Right,
can
right.
I try that will have this flavor
Mm,
profile that in the real I
mm,
can't consume anymore? And just hunting out those, which just makes you search very, very broadly,
right,
which is
right,
why I've now tasted very broadly, because I was like, there's this flavor note. I know what it's like, and I know when I will taste it again in chocolate. But where do I find that in a chocolate bar?
That's so
It's just
interesting.
it's
Yeah.
really, really interesting.
I
Yeah.
can see why that would be really exciting. Yeah.
Definitely.
Um, so I was also going to ask you again, which I think you already answered. Is this still what excites you today? Which it sounds like it does, but
Yeah, it
has
definitely
your
is.
has your focus changed over the years at all, or would you say it's
I'd say it's still the same. And I'd also say that I veer a lot away from inclusions
mm,
for that reason, because I find that takes away my enjoyment
right?
of the chocolate bar because it's got something else in there that is counteracting. It's an added flavor that I can find somewhere else
Right,
that I can
right.
add myself.
That's a good point.
So
Yeah.
if a maker makes a chocolate bar that has an inclusion in it, I'll generally buy the version that doesn't have that inclusion
Hmm.
and then add it myself
Yeah. Yeah.
when I receive the bar, just so that I've got the two
That's a good
the
point. So
two
you're
options.
saying basically if you have a dark chocolate with cashews, you'll just buy the regular plain dark
I'll
chocolate
just
and then
buy
buy the
cashews. If it's
cashews.
cashew butter, then I'll just wipe it on the back. If it's
That's
like
cool. That's
candied
interesting.
cashews, then I'll just
Right.
candy some cashews. I'll do it myself.
Right, right.
Because then I still get to enjoy the what I'm hunting for, but
Right,
then still get to be able to relate to other people who find it more interesting to have the inclusion there.
right, right.
Yeah.
And I guess you're also
My
basically
only,
pairing it in a way, right? You have the
yeah, yeah,
pairing it
yeah.
with different ingredients.
My only exemption to that kind of buying bias is if it's an inclusion that I can't find here. So like
Mm,
spruce tips, we
right,
don't have them here.
right, right.
So the closest I can get is alfalfa sprouts,
Mm,
which has the same flavor profile, but you can only buy them fresh
mm.
and they're always cold. So, and I don't have the ability to freeze dry them. So things like that that are just, they're so unique to a place.
Right, right.
Or, if it's got a berry in that we don't grow here,
Hmm. Hmm.
then the same thing goes.
Okay.
But yeah.
Would
So
you
I
say
have,
then,
it does mean I've put a lot of odd pairings with things. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off. Go.
No, that's okay. That's an interesting way to go about it too. And that's basically how a lot of chefs come up with ideas of what to add, right? They're basically trying
Mm,
the chocolate with these different ingredients, seeing what
yep.
matches, how it changes the perception of the chocolate.
Yeah.
And would you say that what you thought was a great quality bar, has that changed at all? Do you view certain attributes different? No? Okay.
No, what to me, like I've judged, but what to me is a good bar is one that I will go back time and time again,
Mm,
and that I can taste and enjoy any point in the day. So there are some bars that taste to me amazing in the morning, but by the evening, I can't stand that taste.
hmm,
There are others that I can taste throughout the whole entire day, and I really enjoy them. That to me signifies a
that's
good
interesting.
bar.
Hmm.
Um, when I judge, I have to put all that aside and just
Right.
go, right, when's the best window for me to try chocolate, taste it, and analyze it so that I can give my best
Mm,
objective opinion of it. But personal wise, what
yeah,
I view as a good bar is one I can enjoy any point in the day and that doesn't change. Yeah.
that's interesting.
So I have what I call the evening test. If I can
Mm,
try it in the evening and I enjoy it, then I know it's going to be a bar that I'm going to enjoy all the time. If I try it in the morning and enjoy it, and then try it in the evening and don't enjoy it, then okay, that's a good bar, but not going to buy that one again.
right.
Yeah.
I think that's good for people to understand too, because I experience it too many times where, depending not just the time of day, but even the day, it can really
Yeah.
change your perception of the chocolate. There's some times where I try a chocolate that I enjoy, and
Yep.
then I go ahead and I try it another time, and I'm like, I don't, what is this? Why is it so bitter or something like that? There's
Mm.
many factors that influence that, but a lot of
Yep.
beginners don't realize that. So they have to kind of try it a few times, different times to make sure that
And
they get.
also mood impacts that a lot. So like there are some days where I sit down to taste and I'm just like, I don't want to write any notes. I don't want to
Hmm.
pull
Hmm.
out flavor from this. I don't care what this bar gives me other than pure joy of tasting
Right,
chocolate.
right, right.
I'm just going to sit here and enjoy it
Yeah.
for what it is.
That's how most people
Um,
should enjoy their chocolate on a regular
yeah. And,
basis. Yeah.
and I said that to a maker once and they're like, but that's why I create so that you can enjoy. So
Right.
don't feel
Exactly.
bad for doing that. You don't have to sit down and
Yeah.
analyze every single time.
A lot of
Um,
people in the bean to bar world get too obsessed about analyzing and articulating and it's only good if you are enjoying it. If you're not enjoying it
Mm.
anymore, what's the point? Right?
Yeah.
Doesn't make any
Yep. Yeah.
sense.
So I make a point of at least one day in a week, I have to analyze one bar. And I decide that at the start of the week. So then I'm mentally prepared on this day at this time, I'm going to do this bar. I can
Mhm.
taste anything any other time of the week, but there's no set intention in my head that I have to write anything, do
Right.
anything with that tasting. Anything else I taste is just for me.
Mhm.
And then there's one point in the week where I go, right, this one I'm going to sit down and I'm going to exercise my taste, my brain connecting with my taste, and
Yeah.
how I can then put that information on a piece of paper to share with the world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is true. It's like reading, let's say a friend gives you something they wrote and they want you to read it. You can't read it when you're distracted and tired and you have to kind of make it. And the
No.
same is true for chocolate. Like we get a lot of
Yep.
chocolate we have to try. Some people ask me, did you try my chocolate yet? And to be honest, I couldn't because it just didn't fit into my day. I already ate something and that's gonna,
Yep.
not really give you a good
Yeah.
response. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
And I
something.
feel I feel slow sometimes when people, send me something and say, "Can you give me feedback?" And I'm like, "Well, yes, I can in 2 weeks' time." Like I've got to give myself a window to make sure that I can sit down and do it with intention
Right.
because I want they're sending it to me with the aim of gaining something.
Mhm.
I want to give them my best in
Yeah.
return.
Yeah.
And I can't do that in a hurry. So
No, it's very
yeah.
true.
Mm.
Um, so hold on 1 second.
I probably jumped around and answered a
No,
lot
it's
of
okay.
questions
I just
completely
lost my
out of order.
place here.
That's all right.
So, what would you say then is the goal of the work that you do in regards to your Instagram, let me say that again. What is the goal of your work that you do in regards to what you do on Instagram, your reviews, the in-person events? What would you say is your ultimate goal of all this?
I think it's probably twofold. One is to show people that chocolate has multiple different flavor notes that you can gain from tasting it. I think that comes down through more the reviews that I sit down and write.
Mhm.
Um, they're partly for me, partly to show people that, chocolate does have flavor notes like wine, like honey, like
Mhm.
cheese, like lots of things, like apples, the chocolate isn't just uniform. It has flavor. So I think that's one. And the other is I think there's a lack of exploring taste. It's sort of like if I don't like it, then I'm not going to try. And I used to be an occupational therapist that used a lot of play as therapy. And it sounds childish, but when you give permission for someone to just explore with no kind of end result, it's the process of if I taste this and then I taste that and then I put this together and then I try this, what happens? That it's creating joy, and I want people to see that they can do that and it's okay to experience something fun.
Mm.
And I think that that's another part of what I want to try and do. And I suppose it's not twofold, it's threefold. The third bit is to show people that chocolate is more than just it's to me it's not a treat, and I get frustrated when people say I've given myself a treat. It's not
Okay.
a treat. Chocolate is a food. Chocolate is it's an agricultural product like
Mm.
wheat is, like apples are,
Yeah.
like strawberries are. It's a thing that grows. And I want people to know that. Particularly like Tasmania is a very agricultural state,
Mm.
and is also very known for its wines, and its berries and its dairy. We also have a few other niche agricultural areas. And people understand those. But then when it comes to chocolate, there seems to be this kind of cutoff. It's
Mm.
like, and I'm like, no, 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 it's
Do you
it's
think
the
it's because
same. It's
they
the same,
don't?
but it's different.
Do you think it's because they don't know where it comes from or how it's made? Do you think that's why there's that divide?
A little bit. And I
Mm,
think also there's a little bit of well, there's a lot of pride in the stuff that is grown and farmed in Tasmania.
mm,
And that's given a lot of priority, which is fantastic. But there's things that we can't grow here. And not to shy away from letting those things be brought in and be utilized in a
mm,
really
mm.
fantastic way.
Right.
And I think that there's a lot of hesitancy in allowing things in, whether that's a completed chocolate bar or cacao. There's a lot of hesitancy in, oh, it's foreign because it's from somewhere else.
Right.
That's my impression. Whereas I
Hmm.
think we need to allow other things in so that we can broaden what we can do with what we can grow. So,
Hmm.
we can grow certain things, let that be complemented, let that be elevated by what can be grown somewhere else.
Okay.
And if that's then benefiting someone else who's growing it somewhere else, then we're both benefiting kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I do like the idea that chocolate is a food. I said that once to another maker and they looked at me like, no, it's not. But I mean, it's a seed that we
Mm.
grind up like we do many seeds.
Yep. Like
How is it
it's
different
like
than peanut butter or almond butter?
exactly.
Like
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
it's got minerals, it's got antioxidants, it's got good fats, it's got carbohydrates, and you don't have to add a lot of sugar. A lot of good chocolate doesn't have a lot of sugar. So,
Oh.
that's what I try and do too. It's interesting you said that because I try and convince people like don't feel like you're eating a bag of chips, right? You're eating
Mm.
food, a seed that was
Yeah.
ground up, prepared properly. So I like
Yeah,
that. I like
it's
that
to
point.
me, it's not a treat. To me, it's well, I mean, the taste to me is a treat, but because it's something that I can't taste in the real. So for me, that's a treat. But the
Right.
fact that it is chocolate, that in itself doesn't make it a treat.
Yeah.
It's still a food. It's still, yeah, it's
Yeah.
still it's still a,
And
a thing that you consume.
I think that's why a lot of people nowadays still don't, the general public don't appreciate the bean to bar chocolate, that movement and all that and they don't want to pay so much money for it because why am I paying so much money for a treat, right? Junk food, right? But they
Yeah.
can't grasp yet that it's not actually that at all, right?
And I think too, it comes down to sort of, well, particularly in Australia, it comes down to culture. So growing up, there's a lot of you do this, you get rewarded with this.
Mm,
And it's you do this, you get rewarded with something sweet generally.
right,
And
right,
generally it's mass-produced chocolate. So
right.
it's
Like
seen
you
it's
mentioned
seen, you
earlier when we
grow
were,
up as it is a treat.
right.
Whereas and you've had it all the way through your life existence. Whereas things like wine, things like even coffee, things like high-end
Tea,
cheeses,
cheese, yeah.
things like honeys that are, really high in different um, qualities that are good for you. Those things you're only kind of introduced to as you grow older.
Mhm.
So I think the shift in mindset is really tricky for a lot of people because it's just something that's always been there and it was classified as a treat
You're right,
and classified as something that you just scoffed and consumed,
right.
and you only got it as a treat. Whereas actually, it is just as, if not more, important and tasteful as those other things.
Well, like cheese, for instance,
Yeah.
right? Like when do
Mm.
parents say, if you're good, I'm going to give you a piece of cheese? It's not usually something they say. It's
No.
chocolate, right?
And even with cheese, like you grow up knowing that there's the plastic cheese, and then there's the non-plastic cheese that comes in a big square. And then there's the cheese that you get from the farm where it was grown and
Mm,
produced and aged and made. So even growing up here, we're learnt that there's the crappy cheese, there's the
hmm
middle
hmm
class cheese,
Yeah.
but
People
other
don't
things,
realize that with
it's
chocolate
not
yet.
there.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
yeah.
Although you and I have very different approaches, I think, to what we do, I feel that our goal is the same in the sense of educating the public, basically, on bean to bar chocolate. So
Yeah.
where did this desire come from for you to educate?
I think I was looking at this question and dwelling on it a bit. And I think it comes from wanting to broaden people's perspective on something. I think there's always space to learn, there's always space to be curious. And I think in a world where it's just moving really, really fast, it's very important to be curious, to allow yourself to learn. And I think that is the stimulus for my desire to educate people on just being curious, just to investigate, not with the aim to find an end result, but with the aim of just discovering something new for yourself. And also too, I think it stems from being homeschooled, and we were allowed to be curious. We didn't have to sit in a classroom and do this, do that, sit still, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
We're allowed to, like, this is your task. You have to still complete the task, but you're allowed to be curious in how you discover the end result for that task. And I don't think many people, I think it comes back to also the play factor. A lot of people don't allow themselves to be curious,
Right.
to enjoy the act of doing with no end result.
Yeah, a lot
The
of
end result
people.
the end result is you've discovered something new for yourself.
Right.
The end result isn't I've ticked 50 questions on a multiple choice exam. The end result is discovery. And I think that comes from homeschooling. It comes from being in a lot of theatre where I enjoyed the process of how do we set up this scene to portray it to the audience? I loved that bit. I hated performing. That's the boring bit. Okay, we've done all I loved the preparation. And then once that was over, okay, well, we've got, 10 performances. When are we going to start learning the next thing? I think the desire of educating or showing people chocolate is not by putting a piece of paper in front of them and saying, yeah, it's out of a desire of going, I want you to experience something because the experience is what you're going to remember and it's going to fuel your life in the future. You're not going to remember a piece of paper or something that I've given you that you just then hold and probably ends up in the bin. And
Right.
it's
You want them
learning.
to think about it, not just take it like a
Yeah.
sponge. You want them to kind of take what you're saying and find their own way to the
Yeah.
ends.
Yeah.
Be
As an
curious.
OT, we had a saying that was called experiential learning. So it
Mm,
was learning through doing, not by gaining something huge at the end other than acquired knowledge. But you remember all those little steps and all those little things you did in the experience. You remember that. You now have a story that you can then share with somebody else, and then they can learn from your sharing of that story. Whereas just learning by rote or learning in another way, I don't know.
right.
I don't think I feel like I'm answering the question very well.
No, I think
Um,
I get the gist of it is basically well, it's kind of a little bit what I do too, is I'm getting people to think about chocolate. It's not
yeah,
really you sit there and take everything I say and just absorb it and memorize it. It's
yep,
take this information and do something with it. Think about it, ponder
yep,
about it, come to
yep,
maybe a
yep,
different
yep, yep,
conclusion than I would.
yep,
I find it really boring sometimes. There are people who come to a tasting, I've had this before, and they just want to get the tasting notes that the maker has on the back of the bar, and that's like their ultimate goal. And that's so boring. And they're not even really learning much at the end of the day.
yep, yep.
Um, because like you said, it
It,
really is about them understanding themselves, why they feel what they feel, why they think what they think, why they're tasting what they're thinking, and
yep,
playing
yep.
around with
A
that.
really beautiful example of this was I did a tasting a couple of weeks ago. It was a wine and chocolate pairing. And I completely like I don't give tasting notes. I don't say, I tell them where the cacao is from. I may say you might taste this flavor profile, but I hadn't. And I was watching them enjoy the pairing that they were on. They had a lineup of four. And I just said, "Oh, can you tell me what flavor notes you're finding?" And And then I said, or is it just pure joy that you're tasting? And they're just like, yep. But the thing is, then I met up with one of them a little bit later on, a few days later, and she could remember that whole experience. She could remember how amazing it was.
Mm.
Flavor notes didn't matter. It was more that she experienced something that she could then share that story with somebody else, that then they're like, that made them curious to want to experience the same thing. And I think that way of sharing knowledge and that way of educating through story, through experience, is something that inspires me a lot.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think the general public, we want more people to appreciate and purchase craft bean to bar chocolate, but we have to allow them to enjoy it in the way that's meaningful to them, right? It's not going to be the same for everybody.
Yeah. 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 I get frustrated when people say we need to educate people on this. Well, education, yes, to the word, but the means
How?
of that,
Mm,
not by giving them a whole bunch of information that they have to read. That's not educating them, that's
mm.
passing on information. Education for me is giving them an experience, because then they've lived it, they've experienced it, they'll remember that. And then that will be much more powerful in their life than a document that's then going to go into a drawer that they're never going to look at.
What are some practical ways in which you promote the bean to bar world? Um, what would you say?
This I found tricky because I think I do it a lot on the ground, like just talking with, like, I talk about chocolate wherever I am. Sort of, I was visiting a specialist the other day and we got talking about chocolate. And then that ended up on my report. So like I think the way I share it is by talking.
Mm, mm,
I think by putting up a post once or twice a week on Instagram is sharing. But I think my main sharing is when I do tastings with people and just when I meet people in daily life and just start talking.
okay.
Um, because I love talking and I'm not the greatest, I'm not a strong writer, but I am a very strong talker, speaker.
Mm, mm.
And I think I do that the best. So yeah, it is on the ground, it is via non-social means.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what would you say for people in general who want to promote bean to bar? What are some practical ways that they can improve educating people, educating the public? What are some
Yeah,
things?
sure. I think first of all, get your knowledge and your facts, and train yourself, equip yourself first, so that then you when you are sharing, you
What do you
feel
mean
like,
by train yourself? How?
train yourself on how to taste, on where
Mm,
beans come from, on the
mm,
process of how chocolate is made,
yeah, yeah.
the time lengths, like just all the nitty-gritty that people get caught up on sometimes, or just want to know.
Yeah.
I think find a way of explaining chocolate that caters to your audience, because that will change. If
Mm.
I'm talking to a group of primary school children as opposed to a group of elderly people, the way I'm talking about chocolate will, and the words I use will be very different.
Right.
So know your audience before you go somewhere so that you can explain it in a way that is accessible language-wise to them. What was the question again? How can they
Yeah.
prepare themselves?
Practical ways
How
for
can
people
they
to educate the public. What kind of
educate the
things should
public?
they be doing?
Yeah, yeah. And another practical way is share their own personal experiences. That is a practical way. And
Mm,
whether that's sharing it on Instagram or Facebook or whatever means you use, or just in person with someone, sharing your personal experiences is a great way of educating somebody else, because
mm,
no one can argue with your experience because it's your experience.
mm, mm.
It doesn't need a picture perfect photograph or a pristine, wonderfully edited video. Don't worry about that. It's your story that you're sharing. And stories are messy. Stories have ups and downs. But sharing your story, that speaks a lot about an industry. And if you know your facts when you're sharing that story and you know your audience, then you can share and educate people about, educate, there's the word, you can share and inform people about bean to bar chocolate in a way that they can understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
So know your subject matter, know your audience, and connect by sharing stories. I think those are some really
Yeah.
good points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful. Let's talk a little bit
Nice
then.
summary of my ramble.
Let's also mention now, because it ties to this as well, and it's a lot of what you do right now, is chocolate pairings.
Yep.
What are your favorite types of chocolate pairings, and why do you like these pairings?
Oh, I think, what did I put for that? I love pairing them with fortified wines, like I was saying before, the
Mm.
sweeter, thicker,
Okay.
thicker in viscosity
Why the
wines. That's
sweeter
probably
ones?
because they go really well with really high percentage cacao.
Okay.
So you can have something that is sort of the 80% with very caramel, chocolate brownie, maybe a little bit of banana caramel, those kind of flavor profile, or even a little bit of tropical fruit in there. And that goes very well with something that is sweet,
Mm.
and sort of jammy, dark kind of flavor profile. That just the complement is always there, not for every cacao origin, but
Hmm.
for quite a vast
Okay.
proportion of them. The other things I love to pair are sort of dried fruits and nuts. I think that's just a common one to go to.
Mm.
But we can get a lot of unusual freeze-dried fruits and produce here, and it's just quite fun to pair those different things with each other just to
Yeah.
see what works, what doesn't
It
work.
is interesting to introduce the freeze dried because I find that a lot of times, for me personally, I like the lack of moisture. I find a lot of wet fruits interfere a lot when you're trying to enjoy the chocolate and the melt and
Yeah,
all that. So the freeze
yeah, which
dried
I
makes
think
a
is
lot of
why,
sense.
yeah, I think why I also like dried fruit for the same reason.
Right.
And I mean, in the freeze dried category, you can also get freeze dried things like onion and
Right. Yeah.
um, broccoli
Mushroom and
and
tomato and yeah.
mushroom and truffle and broccoli and carrot and like things that people wouldn't necessarily think to try with chocolate. But freeze-dried carrot with a Madagascar does work.
Yeah.
So
A
like
carrot cake with
yeah,
Madagascar
exactly. Or a
chocolate in there.
Mexico. And I think when I'm
Yeah.
pairing, I think, okay, if this was a dessert, take a dessert and then distill that dessert
Right.
into its freeze-dried form or its chocolate form or the chocolate flavored notes form, and then put them together because generally it will work.
Yeah, that's true.
Like someone was saying, well, chocolate and cheese don't work. And I'm like, well, what's a cheesecake then? Like,
There you go.
you like Oreo cheesecake, isn't that cheese and chocolate? And like, but cheese and chocolate don't go together. So like you take something that you love and you distill that into its freeze-dried, its chocolate form, and it does work. Mm.
Very nice. I like that. Are there any pairings that you feel don't really quite work with chocolate that you've come across, or can you really pair craft chocolate with about anything?
I'd say you can pair it with anything, but it depends what cacao and what
Mm,
chocolate you're working with. Like, are
mm,
you working with the cacao butter of that origin, or are you working with the cacao as a whole from that
mm,
origin?
mm,
So like if you're working with the cacao butter from an origin, yes, Brussels sprouts with cacao butter and pepper, yes, that will work if you fry it up in a pan. But it's also it's the method, it's the form that cacao is in, and it is the origin and the form that what you're pairing it is with. Some need a carrier, like the more bitter things will need a second thing, and that's often a spice or a fruit or a nut
mm.
as like an assistant. But I haven't found a pairing that hasn't I haven't found two things that I can pair that don't go with chocolate.
Interesting.
Mm.
Um,
You just got to experiment.
yeah, I think you have to have a little bit of a curious mind, and a little bit of
Mm.
adventure to be willing to try anything. But
And not to be scared of it not working. I think there's a lot of, don't be fear of failure because to my eyes, there's no failure. There's just, you've learnt something
right.
that didn't work to your palate.
So another question I wonder is, because you've been at this for quite a few years now, do you see anything happening in the bean to bar world, craft chocolate world that maybe worries you a little bit, or you think that, is going in a direction um, you wish it wasn't,
I
anything like
think,
that?
yeah, not that it worries me. It's more that I think more and more people need to be aware of cost.
Mm,
Whether that's cost of cacao or cost of labor or like it surprises me a lot when you tell people how long it takes to make chocolate from
right.
the farm to the
Mhm,
thing that they hold that takes a few minutes to dissolve in them
right.
on their palate. Um, I think the thing that is tricky in Australia and even trickier in Tasmania is finding a way of making it understandable to people of the process and the labor and the time it takes to bring them something that is beautiful.
Mm,
And then that is why it costs the way it does. Um, I think the cost will keep going up, but not to be worried about that. It's more to make sure that we're explaining to people why that is so
right.
that they can continue to enjoy beautiful things, but also know why that is the case.
Mhm,
Because
mhm,
otherwise, people, like someone said to me, well, why would I buy high-end coffee when and I said, well, why wouldn't you if you're a coffee drinker? Like, why wouldn't you go for the best you can get that then supports the person that is growing it?
mhm,
And they were like, well, then that puts them out of a job because then they'll have money to live. And I'm like, no, no, no. They'll have money to invest back into themselves so that they can live. They're not going to stop being a farmer simply
mm.
because they now have an income that is livable.
Interesting.
Um, so there, I think finding a way of connecting, it's not you're a farmer because you're poor. It's you're a farmer because that is your livelihood. That is how
Mhm,
you earn a living. That is your job.
mm,
And that's how you earn an income. You're not going to suddenly stop doing that if we pay you more. You're going to be able to do that better. And I
mm.
think there's a disconnect between the two.
That's an interesting
Um,
point. I think it depends where you are in the world, comparing a farmer in Australia versus Peru or something like that. But it is true that although a lot of people are in farming because maybe it was in their family, um, I think there are a lot of people, younger generations, sometimes now returning to farming because they can do it more profitably as well,
mm,
which kind of
yeah.
reinforces your point there.
Yeah.
So
And they're not going to
it's
suddenly
interesting.
stop doing that because you're paying them what
Hmm,
their product
interesting.
is actually worth.
Mm,
They're going to be able to do that better so that then they can actually give you in return something that is better,
mm, mm.
of a higher quality.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the two aren't disconnected, they're
I think there is
joined.
a big disconnect too of people in general and where we get our food, in farming, in that we don't, there's that, if you were to grow your own food, and make your own food from the own food that you grew it, you'd have a very different view and appreciation and value towards the things that we're
Yeah,
eating, and
yeah,
that's very separated. Nowadays it's the grocery stores where you get your food, and beyond that, you kind of have no idea what's happening behind the scenes. And I
yeah,
think it's
yep, yep,
very
yep.
important in chocolate to educate people about what's happening behind the scenes so that they really
Yes, I
can see
think
it.
so.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of people. I mean, I think the kids coming through primary schools now are learning a lot more, but there was a period where
Mm,
the learning of how and where things come from, agricultural wise, was lacking.
mm.
And people just they didn't know. They'd never been told. They'd never been shared with them.
Right.
And I think that's the group that is now the ones that are the biggest
Mm.
focus point because they will help us in the future. Yeah.
Interesting. It is also funny how many people I've talked to who are chocolate makers, for instance, who grew up in cacao growing regions and had no clue about cocoa pods and where it comes from and all
Mm.
that,
Mm,
and they're
mm, mm.
and they're living there. So it's
Yeah.
amazing that disconnect because even if you didn't grow on a farm, a lot of people can conceptualize the growing of corn in the field and the cows but when it comes to chocolate, again, there's still this lack of information that majority of people have, even people that where it grows in their backyard sometimes. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And
yeah,
what I
it's
find too also is it's very because Australia and Tasmania quite multicultural. We do have a lot of people from other cultures that have migrated here, moved here, now live here, are married here. They grew up with cacao, in their back garden. It was just a fruit they ate.
mm,
Um, they are more aware of cacao than an Australian who was
mm,
born, grew up here.
mhm,
And I find that really quite interesting because we can learn from them, whereas they're not often seen as people. Well, they're not the society doesn't always view them as people that bring in that
mm,
kind of information, but we can really learn a lot from people that have come from another culture, another society, another place,
mhm.
and are now living here. We can learn a
Yeah.
lot from them.
There is a lot of excitement I've seen sometimes from people who, like you said, they grew up and they had cacao growing in their backyard. And so I do a
Mm,
tasting, for instance, and they're trying the fruit and the seeds, and it all becomes familiar to them and some of the flavors as well.
mm,
And that's really exciting to see as well
mm,
from people. And then usually they talk a little bit about their story, because they're experiencing
mm.
it. And then all the other tasters around who never grew up with it
Yeah,
all of a sudden have this new view and new appreciation
yeah,
because of their story. So
yeah,
it's really
yeah,
fun.
yeah. It is really, really fun.
Um, what are some hopes you have for the world of bean to bar chocolate, either in Australia or around the world? What are you hoping for?
I I hope more people try it, more people buy it, and more people don't feel bad about giving themselves something that tastes good. Like you only live once. Why buy
Mm,
something of really low quality that is not going to do you health-wise justice and is not going to do the environment justice? Why not spend something a little bit more? Yes, you're going to get less of it, but the benefit to yourself, the benefit to somebody else who's made it and produced it is going to benefit the world in a much bigger way.
yeah.
Um, I think that's one thing. And then I think also, particularly in Tasmania, not to be um, closed off to having product that is made in a very sustainable, transparent, traceable way, not be scared of having or not be closed to having that can complement what you have in your own state.
Mm,
Because I mean, there are a lot of makers here that they want their wine to be seen in other parts of the world. They want their whiskeys and their
that's a good
gins and
point.
their vodkas to be seen in other parts of the world. Why can't someone else that's made something beautiful in New Zealand or made something beautiful in another part of Australia, Western Australia, New South Wales, Queensland, why can't they bring theirs to
Mm,
complement in? You want to complement elsewhere, but you're
mhm.
not letting that happen in return. And I
Yeah.
think in Tasmania in particular, I want to see that happen more. Because I think when you've got two amazing things, one grown from the land that it is in and one from somewhere else that is made just as amazingly and just as sustainably brought in, they can complement each other and make something great.
And that's probably a really great way to explain all that when you're doing your pairings, right? And pairing it with local wines and beverages and things like that, because then it sort of clicks.
Kind of how I term it, because I'm giving you a Tasmanian experience. No, the chocolate isn't made in Tasmania, but the experience is made in Tasmania, and it's paired with something from Tasmania.
Right. So and I guess if you're in Tasmania, whether you're making those products, the wine and whatnot, or enjoying them, you can now visualize on the other side of the world, wherever this chocolate's coming from, those people putting that same quality and passion and hard work into it, you know? Just like you are with your wine.
And it also means that you can take away something from Tasmania and an experience from Tasmania that when you, like if you take that product home, or you just take those pictures home, or you just take that memory home, it's something that you're going to, like, you're carrying that with you. And I think you experience and remember a place much more if you've had something in situ in the place, rather than just buying it online and having it at home. So yeah, when I do tastings, I say it is a Tasmanian experience, because you're not gonna be sitting here looking out on a vast vista of Tasmanian landscape, enjoying this wine and this chocolate, or this gin and this chocolate. You're not going to get that anywhere else, because you're not going to have that landscape anywhere else. Yeah.
Very nice. Do you have any ideas for the future that you wish to share? You know, what plans or ideas do you have, or do you just want to keep doing what you're doing and sort of see what happens?
I'd like to connect with more makers, particularly in the wine and spirits area, to pair chocolate with. I think for me, and the beer area, I find beer and chocolate really, really fascinating. That whole arena, because Tasmania has a lot of brewers, distillers, winemakers, and chocolate goes with those. I mean, some of those categories are harder to pair with chocolate than others, but I would love to be able to do that more with those businesses, to highlight that business and to bring a new element to that business that's not there before. We have a few chocolatiers in Tasmania. We don't have and we have a couple of chocolate makers, but for me, it's more about the taste of the chocolate. So having tasted all of the Australian makers or the New Zealand makers, I want to use the ones that bring a uniqueness to the bean to bar world that then can pair with stuff in Tasmania.
So what is the best way for people to connect with Jessica, either in Tasmania or connecting with you outside of Tasmania? How can they stay in touch?
In Tasmania, like text, phone call is email. Outside of Tasmania, phone is sometimes tricky, but there's always WhatsApp, there's always Instagram message, there's always...
And what is your Instagram?
My Instagram is Jessica. It's all no spaces, no underscores. It's Jessica Chocolate Journeys, but the chocolate is spelled CHOKOLATE. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Because everyone uses the word chocolate as a business name, and so when you're trying to find a business name, you've got to make it a little bit different. Direct message, direct email, direct text message. Yeah. And if you taste something somewhere and you think I should try it, then also text me, because I'm always open to trying something new. So
wonderful.
Yeah.
As long as it's not too sour.
Yeah. That's
excellent. Well, thank you, Jessica. It was really nice exploring your ideas and thoughts around craft chocolate. You brought up some really good points as well. And I think a lot of people will learn from a lot of this discussion. So thank you very much. It was
I
really
hope
nice
they
to talk
do.
to you.
I hope they do. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you, and talk to you again soon. Take care.
Yep. See you, everyone. Bye bye
Bye.
now.
Download the free Bean to Bar app to connect with makers from around the world, either where you live or places you'll visit. Also be sure to visit beantobarworld.com for all things fine chocolate, including professional chocolate tastings, chocolate tutoring, online shop filled with bars, tasting tools, and more, the free learning center filled with research, history, science, videos, podcasts, and much more. Sign up for the newsletter to stay in touch, and feel free to donate to grow the free app and free learning center.